the swearing-in ceremony of all the leadership board of the National Assembly and offered a speech on the importance of the new National Assembly and the challenges going ahead. And to discuss the significance of the inauguration this Tuesday of Venezuela's National Assembly, we now welcome Danny Shaw, Professor of Latin American Studies and Senior Research Fellow at the Council on Hemispheric Affairs. Danny, thank you for joining us.
Happy New Year, Catriona, and to the peace-loving people of the world.
The same to you, Danny. Danny, how important is it that the National Assembly has been sworn in today, and how important is it to the functioning of Venezuela's government?
We just heard the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez's speech, where he contextualizes historically and internationally how significant this peaceful transition is. Juan Guaido and the rest of the pro-imperialist puppets and the coup-mongers no longer have control of the National Assembly. Now the Bolivarian forces have both the executive office as well as this House of Congress. They should be able to continue to push through a people's agenda. And how significant that today in Caracas we see the ambassadors of China, of Vietnam, of Pyongyang, of Cuba, of Zimbabwe, of Yemen, of all the countries who have suffered so much at the hands of U.S. imperialism. So I think really Venezuela is this dividing line. Are we going to stand on the side of the oppressed or on the side of the oppressor? And very predictably, the headlines here, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, today on this significant day for democracy, not just Venezuelan democracy, but global democracy, people's democracy, democracy from below, the United States continues their all-out hybrid war against Venezuela.
Danny, Venezuela, as you say, remains under attack from the United States and the extreme sectors of the opposition, and we've seen what they've done over the past 5 years with a National Assembly that was in contempt. With now a majority progressive National Assembly, what do you think this means going forward in this struggle?
Yeah, the Washington Post yesterday published an article where they said that Venezuelan businessmen, opposition businessmen, are in the Caribbean trying to shut down $40 billion in Venezuelan and government investments. And the Orinoco Tribune yesterday revealed that the opposition has received $1.7 billion from the U.S. government. And that's just the open, overt help. That doesn't include U.S. intelligence and the CIA. We already know that they're working behind closed doors to do everything to destabilize Venezuela. And at the height of an unprecedented pandemic, when we're suffering so much here in the United States, close to 30 million cases now of COVID-19, it's truly amazing that the State Department can find these billions of dollars for regime change in Venezuela. So the internal contradictions of capitalism here in the U.S. continue to intensify, yet the Trumps, the Obamas, this is a bipartisan effort. We know where Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and the other leading sectors of the Democratic Party stand. Both ruling class parties are completely united in a desire to overthrow Venezuelan leadership so that they can recolonize all of Venezuela. Venezuela is a significant piece of the international chessboard. The nature of imperialism is that whether it's Grenada in 1983, really a small country in the Caribbean, or whether it's a massive country like Brazil or all of South America, imperialism is on overdrive to recolonize any country that dares to defy their unipolarity. So I think today's a significant day in that struggle against unipolarity.
Danny, we're talking about a National Assembly, a new National Assembly that, although majority progressive forces, also has a sector of the opposition, a sector that is willing to dialogue, a sector that wants to push the country forward. What do you think we can expect over the new year as Venezuela's political institutions are recovered?
Yeah, Catriona, that's a very important point, because the way opposition And the Washington Post, the tone of the Washington Post article was poor Guaido, he has no money, which is a cruel twisting of the truth. It's the Venezuelan people who are suffering because of this blockade. Things that we would take for granted, whether it was toilet paper or social media or internet, gasoline, a country that produces, that has so much wealth. But the blockade aim is to starve the Venezuelan people and make sure that they don't have access to this wealth themselves. So I think it's important to highlight that 107 different parties and political organizations participated in these elections. 95% of the Venezuelan people are registered voters versus the United States, where it's only 67% of the electorate that's even, the potential electorate that's even registered. So I think Venezuela can really give lessons to Washington, D.C., and to the other capitalist countries about what democracy looks like. Not a democracy by the hyper-rich, by the billionaires, by the Warren Buffetts and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, but a democracy that comes from the bottom. And the Venezuelan leadership and the Venezuelan people, they've now undergone 7 years of a horrific hybrid war. To quote the Argentinian scholar Atilio Borrón, it's the equivalent of atomic bombs that have dropped on Venezuela, and that symbolically, in the form of starvation campaigns, in the form of mercenaries who've invaded, in drone attacks against Nicolás Maduro. So there's all these different critiques coming from the quote-unquote left of Nicolás Maduro and his leadership, but how could we stand with any other side of this anti-imperialist struggle, of this nationalist struggle, other than the PSUV and the Venezuelan leadership, which is really the leadership of the humble sectors, of the oppressed sectors, the exploited sectors of the entire world.
Danny Shaw, thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time to join us today, and for offering your valuable insight into this historic day for Venezuela with the installation of its new National Assembly. Thank you, Danny. And we're going to go live now to Ray Gomez, who's accompanying us in this live